is the Fuel Sports Network.
Behold the King of Kings.
We couldn't do diddly poo.
I'm dropping the hammer.
No, you're not.
And that's the bottom line.
Here, have a quarter, make a phone call.
I have wrestled with an alligator.
What?
I done tussled with a whale.
What?
I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail.
Funky butt loving.
Did he say funky butt loving?
There's no crying. There's no crying in baseball.
Let the big dog eat.
Woo! Whoa! Woo! Whoa! Woo! It's time!
Good morning. As you can see, I'm not even prepared. Very rarely does this happen when, you're not really all together. It happens to the best of us. And to be frankly honest with you, I'm not really all that surprised, being the fact that I had a week off. It was quite nice to be able to have a little bit of time off, get some things done. And it's been a time. It's been a week. Thank you again, everybody, for coming back to the Derek King Show this Wednesday at 9 a.m. every week on the Fuel Sports Network. Make sure that you guys go over, check out all the amazing, great content on fuelsportsnetwork.com. Make sure you go over and you check out the Facebook, check out the X page, check out the Instagram. It's all there, Fuel Sports Net on the social accounts, or Fuel Sports Network on Facebook. So, as you've seen from the headline, there's a few things that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit, not a ton, about the UFL Championship game. And so we're also going to talk a little bit about boxing. We're going to talk a little bit about MMA. We're going to talk about a few other things. And it's something that I really wanted to touch on. And as you can see, above my head, right up here, you can see a boxing glove. That boxing glove right there happens to be one of Iron Mike Tyson's boxing gloves that he has autographed. I am a big Mike Tyson fan. I've also been fans of boxers such as Evander Holyfield, Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, the Machine Gun Tommy Hearns, or the Hitman Tommy Hearns. He's had a few monikers, but we'll get into that. So the first thing I want to talk about and I want to go over is the UFL Championship game. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. The Stallions are the UFL champions. They have been the USFL champions for the last couple of years. So this is basically a three-peat for them. Congratulations to the Birmingham Stallions. San Antonio Brahmas, don't hang your head in shame. You had a great season. You knocked off our Battlehawks in the XFL Championship game. Congratulations to you. We are going to see what is going to be happening going forward. There's been some press releases from Daryl Johnston. There have been other press releases correlated to the league and some interviews that have been done. They're planning on being back next year. Now, in what capacity? What does it look like? We all know now from the press release just made the other day from Daryl Johnston that it's looking like all teams are going to be staying in their markets and they're not going to be adding any teams. And so that's kind of where we're at this point. I'm not surprised. And frankly, to be honest with you, if you guys have watched this show, if you have watched any of the other content that I've been on, whether that's the X-Fan show, whether that's Arena STL with Will Freeman, whether that's any other of the content here on the Field Sports Network. I've pretty much stood fast with I didn't really think that the league was going to be back next year. Now, being of the fact that they have Fox money behind them, Redbird Capital, knowing that company, again, I am very in tune to the world of business, and I know how these companies operate. I know their MO, their modus operandi. I know what it is that they do, and how they do things business-wise. And so it didn't make any sense to me that if the league is losing money, which, I mean, let's face it, when you can only put 8,000 fans, to 10,000 fans on average per team, excluding the Battlehawks, that's not a good look. You might be able to fudge the numbers a little bit to 12,000, but let's be real. The Battlehawks championship game was a big turnout in the XFL championship game against the San Antonio Brahmas. But as we could tell, the UFL championship game, even though they had 20+ thousand tickets sold, I think it was 22, 23, get in the comments section and let me know for sure, but I'm pretty sure it was around that range. It didn't look like maybe 10,000 showed up to that game. And that's not a good look, right? Optics wise, that's not a good look. And let's just be real about it. The league and league officials insist that they're going to be back next year. We will see. I'm still standing by my statement that I cannot honestly understand from a business perspective of why you would continue to lose money and want to continue to build a product. That being said, look at the NFL's moving to LA. That's a great example of everything that we're talking about here. LA's been without a football team for over 20 years at that point, and you got to ask yourself the question, do they really need it? You look at Vegas, where the Raiders moved from Oakland to Vegas, and you got to say Vegas, man, Vegas, gambling capital of the world. Nobody really goes there for sports. They're going there for the casinos. They're going there for the experience, right? You're going there for concerts. I've been there. I've been at Caesars. I've been at those places. And that's really kind of a lot of the reasons is why I don't gamble. But, to those that do, that's their thing. I like experiences. I like to go to shows and do things like that. And so that's why I enjoy Vegas. Obviously Vegas is looking to do other things, but you look at these markets and you go, are they really that fan-centric to a sport? That really remains to be seen with the UFL. And the UFL in these markets, Birmingham, San Antonio, DC, so on and so forth. I mean, I can go down through the list. DC had a decent turnout this year. Proud of them for what they managed, considering the circumstances. San Antonio, really kind of disappointed that they didn't have a better turnout than what they did. They've been in the running for an NFL team for years and years and years. And after getting, left at the altar a few times and kind of getting used as bait, St. Louis can attest, we know we're constantly used as bait or as a threat or something with the NFL. So that's why we just pretty much have all universally said, just take your NFL. So next season, we'll see all 8 teams back that we currently saw this season. They're all going to be in their current markets. Nothing is going to change, so they say. We will see. We will see. All right, so we're going to move on to this next segment. We're going to take a quick little break. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. It's just going to be a quick little timeout. And we'll come back around and we'll start in on this segment. See you in just a second. You know, whenever I come back from a segment break, I always remember that episode of Seinfeld and where Kramer had gotten the Merv Griffin set pieces. You know, I was probably showing my age, you know, that I'd love to watch Seinfeld. But he just comes, he takes like a little break and he's drinking like a Coca-Cola and he's eating some chips and stuff. And he, like, you know, adjusts his tie, belches, and he's, we're back. You know, that's kind of how I feel like doing it every single time. But, you know, one of the things that I wanted to really talk about in this second segment coming in is really the state of boxing and the fight game. And obviously, as you can see above my head, again, to those that didn't tune in earlier, that's one of Mike Tyson's gloves that he had autographed that I have up there that I'd recently acquired. I'm very happy about that. And I'm a big fan of boxing. I grew up on it. And I've gone back and watched stuff even before I was born, you know, 50s, 60s, you know, some of the great matches. And it bothers me that today, what boxing has become, it's almost become, and again, as you could tell right over here, you can't see it over here, but over here, you can see one of my championship belts. It's the former NWA/WCW championship belt. I have the 10 pounds of gold, the globed, or some call it the sloth championship from the NWA during the 60s, 70s era. And so I've been a fan of wrestling. That's more along the lines of where boxing has kind of gone to at this point. It has gone to this level of more entertainment. And I could understand if boxers get in the ring and they just kind of like, hey, let's let this thing go for a little bit. Let's just kind of dance and let's jive and let's make something out of it. Let's give the fans their money's worth, right? Let's go for a little bit. It happens in MMA. Guys will do it. They'll just say, hey, let's either stand right in the middle here and let's trade, or or let's just kind of stay back and just kind of play it and go the distance. That's where you see a lot of that. You see in these bigger championship bouts, especially in MMA. And that's a lot of the reason where I think the interest has tuned out from MMA and from boxing, is because you started to see this to where people have come to the realization and said, something's a little off here. This doesn't seem like this is a legitimate fight. This seems to be a little bit doctored, manufactured. Again, in wrestling, we all know it's quote unquote predetermined, right? Here's the thing. I really dislike when people say that wrestling is fake. Have you been to a wrestling match? Have you physically been there ringside? I have, to many, many wrestling matches, pro wrestling events. And I can tell you this for a fact. It is real. They are really hitting each other. They are really doing these moves. They are really taking the hits. It is real. It is true that this is real. And that's why Jeremy says it right here, never use the F word. I don't use the F word. I stay away from that as much as I can, because I know, personally speaking, and Jeremy can attest to this, he's done some amazing interviews with professional wrestlers over the years, or as Vince liked to call them, entertainers or superstars. They hate this right here. Don't you ever say that around a professional wrestler. Don't do it. You could say, hey, I love you entertaining me. I love what you do. It's great. It's fantastic. I'm always entertained. I have a great time. That's what it's all about. And boxing has become more and more akin to what the WWE has been for the last several years. And I'm just, I cannot understand why it is that we've got, and again, this brings up Mike Tyson, the Mike Tyson fight coming up against Jake Paul. Are we really doing this? Jake Paul against Mike Tyson, Iron Mike Tyson. I don't care if Mike Tyson is 60 plus. I don't care. I watched that man in the 80s. Just go back YouTube, watch some of those fights. Stone cold killer. The look in his eyes was, I'm going to do bad stuff to you. I'm a bad man and I'm going to do bad things to you. Go back and watch that Larry Holmes fight. He had something to prove. He had a chip. He was extra angry that fight because why? Muhammad Ali was his idol. That's who he idolized. You know, Mike Tyson looked up to Sonny Liston, who Ali beat for the title. One of the toughest, meanest guys ever to be in the ring in Sonny Liston. He had something to prove against Larry Holmes. Go back and watch that fight. Go back and watch the Botha fight. Go back and watch a couple other fights where Mike Tyson got mad. Because I want to tell you right now, that was not a pretty sight. Now, I've watched all the old matches, and again, this is kind of a little bit of a history lesson, but leading into some of the fights like Tommy Hearns against Marvin Hagler, Hagler, against Duran, Duran versus Hearns, Ray versus Hagler, Ray versus Hearns. I mean, gosh, the list just goes on and on and on of those fights in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. One of the biggest, nastiest fights that the hardest hitters I ever watched was George Foreman versus Ronnie Lyle. If you've never watched that, go back and watch that fight. Oh my gosh, it just shakes your bones thinking about how hard those guys were hitting each other. A couple of the hardest punchers to ever fight in the fight game. It's just amazing what's going on. Here we got Jeremy says that Ryan Garcia is a joke, juices up, and seems to have full-on CTE. Yeah, that's basically, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson is a publicity stunt, in my opinion. Let's be real, as strong and powerful as Mike is, even now at 57, Jake Paul can't win. If Paul wins, I feel like it's doctored. Absolutely. That's exactly where I was getting to. Gone are the days of legit warriors of the ring. Holmes, Foreman, Tyson, Tommy, Gunn, Holyfield, etc. I remember, and all of the viewers and the listeners to the show can comment and they could say, hey, you know what, I watched this or I watched that. I think during that time frame in the 80s, we had probably the best level of boxing next to the late 60s, early 70s. You even go back further, in the Sonny Liston area, you look at Rocky Marciano. You look at Joe Frazier. You look at, Felix Trinidad whenever he was really good. I mean, everybody remembers Tommy Morrison. When he came in, he was, the great hope in boxing, if everybody remembers that, how much they fluffed him and polished him and put him out in front of the camera. When you would have put Tommy Morrison in the ring with Evander Holyfield, he'd have creamed him. Lennox Lewis creamed him. You would have put him in Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson would have absolutely destroyed him in Tyson's prime. That's why Morrison and Tyson never linked up. That's why you saw Morrison and Foreman because Foreman was in his late 40s at that point. I believe he's in his late 40s, might even have been close to 50, but I'm pretty sure he's in mid-late 40s at the time. This guy well past his prime. He's overweight. Yeah, he's still got the punching power. We all know that's the last thing to go. But man, oh man, Tommy Morrison barely squeaked out of that one. Go back and watch it on YouTube. It's right there. I implore everybody, go back. Watch Gotti Ward, any of the three of the Gotti Ward fights. Rest in peace, Arturo Gotti. But those Mickey Ward, Arturo Gotti fights, some of the best ever. That first round of Tommy Hearns, and Marvelous Marvin Hagler, go back and watch it. Round one. The greatest round in boxing history, I think, personally. You watched Ray Leonard versus Hearns. You watch Ray Leonard versus Hagler. In that fight with Hearns and Hagler, Ray Leonard was in the audience. And they've done documentaries on this, and Ray Leonard has spoken to this. He jumped up out of his seat once Hagler had beat Hearns. And he immediately said, I could beat him. I could beat him. Because he watched him. He studied him. He said, how do I beat this man? He's unbeatable. He's just like, he's like the story of Rocky. He just keeps moving forward, right? No matter how many hits he takes, he's tough. He's solid. He just keeps moving forward. He's like an unstoppable force. Ray Leonard learned he could outbox him. There's a difference. That's the key to the game. That's where Ali had success. That's where Floyd Money Mayweather had success. That's where other boxers have had success because they've outboxed fighters. You can have a guy that can hit hard. You can have a guy that can be a great fighter, but are they a great boxer? Do they know how to play the game? That's the thing. Who was the guy with the broken neck? That is an interesting one. I don't know. Let's go back. Great documentary being made on Tommy Morrison. He was one of the good ones. He was one of the good ones. But like right here, he was really good, just not good enough. He wasn't. Tommy Morrison got in Tommy Morrison's way. Tommy Morrison could have been one of the greats. But Tommy Morrison wanted to be a star. Bright and shining. In the sky. That's what Tommy Morrison wanted to be. That's why he was in Rocky V. He wanted to be a star. And yes, Tommy Morrison was the pride of Kansas City. He came out of Kansas City. And Jeremy, you could also attest for this one. Isn't Baron Corbin out of Kansas City? Isn't he a Golden Glove boxer? Baron Corbin, the WWE professional wrestler, superstar. Mayweather was not that good. I will have to disagree because he was smart. That's what makes him really, really good. Just because he didn't have knockout power and just because he didn't have that aura behind him didn't mean that he didn't have the ability to be great. He was a smart boxer. A lot of people hated Ali because of the rope-a-dope stuff and the Ali shuffle and all the showmanship and everything that went on. That is one of the things that I feel that it gets really kind of overlooked with Mayweather over the years. Yeah, it's you got to know. You got to know the game. You got to play the game, and you got to know. Let's see here. We got bleed for this about a boxer who broke his neck and came back to win the title. I'll have to look into that. I don't really remember all of that. I remember $1 Million Baby. I remember that one. The Rocky franchise, obviously, Raging Bull. Just to name a few, some of the great boxing movies of all time. Yeah, Baron Corbin is a KC guy. There you go. the other point is Floyd had an extraordinary cardio. He did. He could go. And yes, he carried that Conor fight. And if you go back and you watch it and you slow it down, they're in a clinch. You could tell, you could see Mayweather saying to Conor McGregor, hey, slow it down. Slow it down. You ain't got to blow yourself up. You see that in wrestling. You see guys that'll come out, or gals, and they'll blow themselves up on their entrance. And they completely run out, and they don't have any energy left to put on a decent showing and everything else. And that's something that you run into a lot. Yep, Rocky movie ended it for him, in my opinion. He wanted more than he earned. Yeah, Tommy hurt Tommy. He really did. Here we go. Vinny Pazina? That's a whale of a one to have to pronounce. I had to sit down and think on that one. The little guy in my head's, trying to start a fire with sticks. Mayweather is one of the smartest fighters ever. Yeah. He's smart. He knows the game. I don't like him. I hated watching his fights because you just kind of knew the outcome. You knew he was way smarter than the other guy that he had across the ring. The Tasmanian Devil. Woo, what a name. I like that as a boxing name. That's pretty neat. Talking kind of in correlation with the fight game in MMA, you're seeing a lot of this in MMA now, and where you're starting to see this, hey, this is more about entertainment, and let's kind of drag this on. Let's drag this out. Go back and watch the old Dan Severn UFC tournament fights or the Don Fry tournament fights, either in Pride. Same thing with Severn, either in Pride or UFC or whatever other organization at the time. And you go back and you watch some of those fights. I mean, they're brutal. That was when it was legitimately no holds barred. There was nothing you could not do back in those days. That's no joke. They legitimately had no rules. That's why they couldn't fight anywhere but, these other countries, and, Vegas, I think they could fight in, and, a couple other places, but they had, they have boxing commissions, fight commissions. They, St. Louis, and this is what's hurt St. Louis over the years. And Jeremy can attest to this, Mr. Housewright, the good doctor. He can attest that the St. Louis Sports Commission, especially the boxing commission and the fighting commission, but the sports commission has had a illegal blood ruling for years and years and years. And it's really hurt the wrestling business for a lot of years in that field, because there's a lot of wrestlers, again, in the business. We all know it's entertainment, and we all know that it's pre-produced and it's predetermined, but yeah, right there. Yep. No blood. There you go. But if a guy wants to blade to get a little color, because they're having a blow-off match at, maybe one of their bigger events that they're hosting in St. Louis, and he wants to get a little bit of color, well, he can't do that. Now, if he gets opened up the hard way, that's different. If you get opened up the hard way, that's completely different. And there are some wrestlers that have opted to go that route. Randy Orton versus Brock Lesnar. Do I need to say anything? Go to YouTube, look it up. Where Randy and Brock knew about it, and they knew what they were going to do before they went through the curtain and went out there. And there was a hell of a lot of heat from the boys whenever they came back through. So there's some things that, they will do. And there you go. Here, this is what Kevin is saying, that he watches every UFC pay-per-view, and I can tell you that it has changed a lot from back in the day. It's kind of what the outcome of some of these fights will be. And right, you can almost see it like it's laid out in front of you like a nice yellow brick road to lead you to the conclusion of what the outcome is going to end up being. And you'll see some of these fights. I can't remember the fighters that were in this last one of the last big pay-per-views that UFC had up. Was it Colby Covington? And I can't remember the other guy's name. And where they basically just said, we're going to stand in the middle. We're just going to trade. That's that you got to be tough. You got to be tough. When it comes to the fight game and where boxing is, boxing has to fix boxing. And once boxing gets back to what boxing was, then it'll be okay. But again, the CTE issues is the same thing with the UFC, the fight game. It's the same deal. Guys, we're coming up on a hard 30 here. I've appreciated you tuning back in this week after I took a week off. I had to go get some stuff accomplished. I'm a farmer by trade. In my off time, I run a couple of cattle ranches. And, I have a lot of other irons in the fire and other projects that I've got going on besides the sports stuff. I deal with a lot of different things, and that's just one of them. So I figured just let you in on what I do for a living a little bit. But thank you guys and gals. I appreciate you tuning in this week. We'll be back next Wednesday, 9 a.m. Thank you so much, guys. Make sure that you turn into all of the great stuff on Field Sports Network, fieldsportsnetwork.com. Check them out. Love you guys. See you soon.